From the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, Leah Nord, Senior Director, Workforce Strategies and Inclusive Growth. We're going to start with Ms. Nord, please, for 10 minutes.
Thank you very much. Again, thank you, Mr. Chair, Vice Chairs, and committee members. It's a pleasure to be here this evening. My name is Leah Nord, and I'm the Senior Director of Workforce Strategies and Inclusive Growth at the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, working in the areas of skills, the future of work, immigration, employment standards and practices, diversity and inclusion. My comments today will focus on these areas within my portfolio, speaking not only to the crisis period, but the reopening, the recovery, and return to new normal that is happening at different timings and stages across the country. The Canadian Chamber is the voice of Canadian business. We represent 200,000 businesses across the country, across sectors and across sizes. Our network consists of 450 chambers of commerce and boards of trade, alongside over 400 corporate members and an equal number of association members. Through the crisis, we believe that one of the most impressive aspects of the response, and what will hopefully be one of its most significant legacies, is the Team Canada approach that has been taken. The centerpiece of the Canadian Chamber's response during this crisis has been the Canadian Business Resilience Network. It is supported by government in partnership with our network and members, as well as our partner business associations. This inclusive and bilingual campaign, including a microsite, has proven to be a successful, centralized, and authoritative source of information, best practices, toolkits, and thought exchange, allowing for businesses to prepare, persevere, and eventually prosper. Looking more specifically to the labor force, and to seemingly state the obvious, the crisis has had a detrimental effect on Canada's workforce. Through the April 2020 Canadian Chamber and Stats Canada survey, called the Canadian Survey on Business Conditions, we know that Canadian businesses have undertaken many efforts to support their employees through the crisis and keep them connected to the labor force. Innovations include remote work, e-commerce, and work sharing. Nonetheless, we also learned through the survey that 40% of businesses had laid off staff and 38% of them had reduced staff hours or shifts. Stats Canada will be back in the field next week with a second round of the survey, and we look forward to gaining further insights and seeing if and how attitudes and practices have shifted as the crisis continued. Further, March and April 2020 labor force data survey indicates that since the start of the crisis, 3 million Canadians have lost their jobs, 90% of them temporarily, and more than 8 million have applied for the Canadian Emergency Relief Benefit and Canada Emergency Student Benefit. Not surprisingly, in the initial phase of the crisis, the most significant job losses were in accommodation and food service industries. Initially, populations most affected in the first phase included youth, women, and those working in less secure, lower quality jobs. Good producing sectors were most effective in April, particularly manufacturing and construction. Sectors including tourism, wholesale and retail trade, education and recreation have also experienced employment declines of up to 35%. The crisis has also compounded preceding downturns in sectors such as oil and gas and forestry, and pivots in sectors such as manufacturing and mining. It also highlighted the needs in transport and warehousing, health, human resources, and food retail, underscoring the importance of the country's essential workers. As I turn my comments to the reopening and recovery periods, I will underscore that many businesses across the country, across sectors and sizes, are still very much in crisis mode. For example, Monday is June the 1st, and even in light of recent announcements such as the Canadian Emergency Commercial Rent Assistance for small businesses, many members are wondering if and how they are going to make the rent this coming month. Specific to the reopening period, the Canadian Chamber has developed a series of recommendations, including the importance of leaning on international best practices and ensuring interprovincial alignment. We also believe that although emergency temporary financial support programs have been needed and in fact crucial to help companies and individuals stay afloat during the pandemic, there is also a need longer term to ensure sustainable public finances. We also appreciate that there continues to be more questions than answers right now. The crisis has shown us that the best public policy is made when it widely draws upon the advice of civil society, including businesses both large and small across sectors. The conversations need to start now in a structured manner to ensure that governments at all levels are receiving the best possible advice to minimize unintended consequences. An excellent example of this is the creation and composition of the federal government's COVID-19 Supply Council, which includes representatives from business, labor, many sectors and nonprofits, and includes the voices of academics, women, and Aboriginal business. As we look further to recovery and a return to the new normal, we need to get Canadians back to work. Canada's workforce will simply not be the same as we move into recovery. In the span of a few short months, we went from one of the tightest job markets in recent history to unprecedented job losses. Unemployment may not return to pre-crisis levels at any point soon. Available jobs and skills required will shift. Employers might increasingly look to automation to maintain operations during future crises and reduce risk. Canadians will need reskilling, upskilling, and skills training programs to get them back to work. Education and training will also change, including more online and hybrid learning, importance on durable skills, with a focus on both work-integrated learning and lifelong learning. Ensuring that all Canadians have opportunities to participate in the recovery will be essential for inclusive growth and widespread job creation. With this, the Canadian Chamber has three main recommendations. The first is to ensure inclusive growth in the recovery period. And in the first instance, this means that there needs to be inclusive voices represented at public policy and discussion forums. I'd given the example of the federal government's COVID-19 Supply Council. This must be replicated at all tables and levels of government, as well as in boardrooms and leadership meetings, at labor and union tables, in occupation, health, and safety committees, and in business operations and return to work discussions. Secondly, Canada needs a comprehensive review of the employment insurance program. In prefacing this recommendation, I would like to say two things. Firstly, this is a long-standing recommendation of the Canadian Chamber, and we have any number of policy resolutions over the years on this issue. Secondly, with this recommendation, we are not diminishing the incredible work of the Federal Public Service in response to the crisis in developing and implementing programs such as the Canadian Emergency Wage Benefit, the Canada Emergency Relief Benefit, and the Canada Emergency Student Benefit. Quite the opposite, they all deserve widespread praise. Yet we do believe that it is telling that these programs were necessarily situated outside of the EI program framework. Moving forward, we need to identify the reform needed to build a system that can respond to current and future workforce needs, ensure Canadians remain connected to the labor force, and that it includes a strong upskilling and reskilling training component. Our third recommendation to get Canadians back to work is to use local labor market information and real-time data to develop labor market solutions that are created by business for business, led by sectors for sectors, and tailored by communities for communities. In doing so, we advocate the use of chambers of commerce and boards of trade as local hubs for employer collaboratives that can provide facilitated time and space for business to share, collaborate, and plan. These are unprecedented times, and there is no playbook to turn to. Policy and programming recommendations for recovery at this point are conjecture at best. There needs to be a thoughtful, inclusive, and measured approach to the response, and this is exactly what the Canadian Chamber's proposal, called the Talent Pipeline Management and Economic Resiliency Program, is designed to do. Just very briefly, because I'm aware of the time, this is a program that prioritizes alignment between education, training, support, and workforce systems. It's a program that has been implemented by our colleagues in the US across 33 states. It's been taken place at the state level as well as regional level. Large cities and smaller rural towns have been involved. It has even been used by individual companies in their internal business practices. Involved is the creation of employer collaboratives in a wide range of sectors, including hospitals, healthcare, construction, manufacturing, utilities, education, cybersecurity, fintech, and IT. It has also been used to form collaboratives organized along supply chains, and it's proven to be self-sustaining after initial seed funding. During the crisis, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation has been infusing its academy curriculum with a recovery focus and using a national learning network to share challenges, solutions, and best practices. There's been success in retraining workers in sectors, keeping them tied to their sectors, as well as identifying worker crosswalks, identifying upskilling, reskilling, and career pathways. The overarching benefit of this is that it allows for managing and mitigating both major expansions and contractions in the economy and workforce. It builds resiliency and it future-proofs workforce planning. With that, I'll thank the committee members for the opportunity to appear today and look forward to answering any questions. Thank you.